You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158.
Welcome back to 8158 Podcast, Stories of Sacrifice. Today, we're bringing you a powerful two-part episode with Anthony Crane, a man whose life has been shaped by the fire service in every way. Abandoned by his father at 3 years old, Anthony was raised by firefighters in his small mill town. The firehouse became his safe haven, and by 16, he was officially on the job. But purpose came with pain. After a devastating explosion left him with life-altering injuries, he faced PTSD, addiction, and the struggle to rebuild. In part one, we'll dive into Anthony's early years, how the fire service shaped him, the trauma he carried, and the event that changed everything. This is a story of resilience, sacrifice, and survival. Let's get into it.
Today we have a very special guest, a very honorable guest, somebody we think that you will like to listen to. His name is Anthony Crane, and he was a 25-year veteran in the volunteer fire department. And we're not going to ask him a whole lot of questions, but we're just going to give him the floor to speak his story out, because he has quite a bit to say, and I think you'll be very interested in hearing what he has to say. So, with further ado, I will hand you over to Anthony. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Not sure where you want me to start at, but yeah, like you said, I was 25 years certified firefighter. I got my first certification when I was 17. That was what they called 1121, which was a structural firefighting back then. Kind of grew up in the fire department, just a kind of a quick background, across the street from my grandma was the firehouse. So, as a kid, my job was to go run up, hit the little red button to set off the siren for the town to know that there was a fire somewhere. So, but growing up with that, but like you said, 25 years certified. I'm trying to figure out where to start at with it. Like I said, you kind of hit it on. There was a lot. So
yeah. So let's start with how you got started on becoming the little guy that pushes the red button.
Okay. so when I was probably about 4, and unfortunately, I was one of those kids that the dad went and got milk and never came back. So I didn't really have a father figure growing up, had a single mother of 2 kids that kind of had a struggle. And so I would always hang out at my grandma's house. Well, right across the street, like I said, was the fire department. And every time they went out, every time I heard that siren go off, I would run to the fence, watch them, just was, amazed at the trucks, watching them run tailboard, right on the back. And it really became like, something I just really would love to do. And I give a lot of credit to a guy. His name's Keith Rucker. He was actually one of the first ones that walked over to the fence right after they got back from a call. And I was standing there watching them wash the trucks. And he walked me over there and he goes, "You want to help us wash the truck?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." What 4-year-old ain't going to want to go there and be able to hang out on a fire truck? I mean, so they kind of, every time they went on call, I would go there and help out. I'd help wash the truck or wash it off. And then they would have their meetings on Tuesday nights, and they would bring me over there for their meetings, which generally they would pull the fire truck out, open up the bay door so everybody could literally see us at meetings. So it was a really tight knit community area. Like it was small. The town itself is only about a mile wide with one red light. It real tight knit. Started going on calls once it got older, about 11, 12 years old. They would start letting me ride with them. I really couldn't do nothing but other sit on the pump and just kind of help roll with hoses, stuff like that. But I just, it was a go-to thing. Having a lot going on as a childhood, a lot of, personal problems going on in my life. When I was a kid, I wasn't the best kid in the world, That it was a saving grace. They pretty much pulled me in, became father figures to me, showed me, this is how you're supposed to act. This is how, you go out, you help your community, you do what you can. So by 12 years old, I knew that was the career I was going to go to. I knew that's what I wanted to do, was to be a firefighter. It was literally set in my mind that I was put on this earth to help people. And a good thing and a bad thing is I learned how to be able to help people in time of crisis. Pretty much when crap hits the fan, I pretty much can be more calmer than I am on a calm day. And it helped, but it was also a curse. Like I said, I got my career started with Bath. At age of 17, I was certified. My first certification, which was 1121. They've been so many after, but 1121.
Bath County originally?
Bath, South Carolina.
Bath. Okay.
Yeah, I actually grew up in Bath, South Carolina. And like I said, it's an old mill town. There's a whole bunch of mill towns put together. So that's where I grew up. It was the first fire department that I ever was on. Like I said, at the time he was captain. I believe he's still captain. I'm not real sure, but his name was Keith Rucker. He was also the fire instructor too. So I pretty much had my adopted firefather also teach my first certification. So he made sure that if I was getting something wrong, I heard it. But got my first certification. Again, I was still volunteer. I never really wanted to go paid. I grew up, like I said, I grew up with a lot of people that volunteered. Literally, that's what it was. Back then, they really didn't have pagers. They had radios and all, but like the pagers they have today, they didn't have them back then. So they set off the siren. And the siren literally was the alert to everybody. So the entire community would come out and the firefighters grab the truck and everybody would go where it was and help. And, you might not be a firefighter, but if you was a neighbor, you was out there grabbing a hose and helping pull it. So I give a lot of credit to them because they kind of put up with a lot of my crap. So yeah, so that was kind of where the first department I was on. And again, like I said, I say I was certified at 25 years, but my whole life I was firefighting. I wasn't technically, but I was in the department.
Pretty much. I mean, ever since you're a young boy, you started off watching them, watching their trucks and attending meetings, and then you started hitting the siren button.
Oh, yeah. So it was
honorary.
Yeah. I got honorary at a very young age, and and it was something I've always. It became a passion of mine. It was in my heart. It was in my blood. That's all I ever wanted to do was fight fire. I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to. I know a lot of people. Once we get more into the story, you'll see the certifications I took.
Mm-hmm.
Going to fires at a young age, you learn real quick that this is not just a nature thing. This thing is a living, breathing, eating monster.
Correct. Yeah, it's a very, very nasty creature.
Yeah, it is. And that was something I learned very young. And I hate to tell it, and I even told my therapist this before. I hate to say it was a fascination, but it wasn't like a fascination of, oh, I like the stuff burn. It was a fascination of how it worked. How was it that something like that literally is just Mother Nature
Mm-hmm.
that can destroy and move so fast due to different competitions of material or gas or whatever. It became this thing of I really wanted it to know. It really did, and that really drove my passion into my career. Every certification I could put my hands on, I took it.
Right, right.
Because that gave me more learning experience. That gave me more knowledge. That gave me the tools to do what I needed to do. And so I started with 1152, which is, in structural firefighting. Then I got my auto extrication right beside it. And then I got my first responder certification. And by 18, I was certified in structural firefighting, auto extrication, first responder, and wildland.
Wow. That's a lot. 18-year-old.
Yeah, it was, but I loved it. I enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, you might sit in a class 60, 70 hours. There was some class 80-hour classes and just have to sit there and be bored out your mind. But I loved it. I enjoyed it. And like going to South Carolina's firefighting academy for trainings, like that was fun to me. It was so interesting and to be able to do it. And I didn't get into doing it because I wanted, everybody to look and go, oh, look what I can do. I got into it because I noticed at a young age that there would be people that could just drop like that on the side of the road. No reason at all. And if you're not trained, you're not certified, you don't know what to do, people really don't help that much. And then it's nothing against people not wanting to help. They don't understand the Good Samaritan law, which I learned later on, that if you help in good faith, you're good. You ain't got to worry about repercussion of being sued or anything. It's a law. So I wanted to help. I wanted to be that person that if I'm out at Walmart and somebody has a heart attack, I know how to perform CPR. I know how to perform that. If somebody gets in a car wreck, I know how to get that person out that car. It wasn't because I wanted everybody to look at me. It was I wanted to be that person that if you was in your time of need, I was there. So went from Bath, and again, I kind of stayed again in the small town. Went to another department called Clearwater. I'm really not going to go too much in detail of that department just because some legal things, but it was a small department. They needed people. decided to go there to, to kind of help build the department up, give them more people in the community to be able to respond. Because I think at the time there was only like 3 people on the department. So started going to them. I during the time I was with the fire department, I literally was on the straight and narrow. That was all I did. Every day you found me at the department. I didn't care if we were just sitting there. I'd find something to do. I'd wash the bays. I literally would sweep the bays. I'd mop the day area. I was just at the department. I was ready. I was ready to go. End up getting my first of 2 big major fires. And by this time, I've been on a couple house fires. I really haven't had anything major. We've had some first responder calls. And again, it really wasn't affecting me, mentally at the time because, again, I just was blocking it out. The negativity of it, I blocked out. My job was not to look on the negativity. It was to help do this, help this person, help put this fire out, help rescue this person from this. The mental part really wasn't kicking in.
Right. You had to compartmentalize everything that was going on.
Yeah. And I had to do it at a young age. That was the thing. I had to do it at a very young age. And, and this is on top of all personal things that went on in my life too. So, trying to juggle both of them, I did. I just blocked it out. I was like, you know what? I put it in my mind that, and I hate saying this to people. And again, my condolences to you and your situation. But, as a first responder, you learn, especially as a firefighter, EMT, whatever, you get that mind of people are going to die.
Yeah.
Like you do. You have to put that in your mind that we don't know when it's going to happen, but people's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you try to do, no matter how hard you try, it's going to happen. And having that thought, it kind of helped in major situations. Like one of my first DOA auto accidents was a motorcycle versus an 18-wheeler at 55 miles an hour. I was 18. It was my first one. I literally just got certified in auto education and went to that call. 18-wheeler ran the red light, hit the motorcyclist.
Mm.
Yeah. Seeing that at 18 years old is, you don't forget it. You really don't. But I continued my career with the other department, and at the time, like I said, it was a mill town. We had a mill called Clearwater Finishing Plant that caught fire, and it was a tinderbox. These are old soaked, oil soaked wood, like 1900 mills.
Right.
And I think we spent 4 days out on that fire fighting that thing. And that was when I first experienced my first flashover. That's when I first seen a bat giraffe. Like everything I went through with training at the fire academy and all my training was what a flashover is essentially everything inside of a compartment, say a house, a room, whatever. You got a fire that starts in that room. Well, the temperature actually rises with the heat. Okay. Well, everything around you is combustible. They have a temperature that is a combustible temperature. At that temperature, they ignite. They don't have to be touched by flame or nothing. They just get to a point, they ignite. A flashover is when everything inside that room hits its combustion temperature. Everything flashes over and ignites.
Okay.
You can go from having like a lot of times I've seen them do in like living rooms due to like Christmas tree fires. The Christmas tree can catch fire, and then it might catch the couch beside it on fire. Well, the material out of that couch, the synthetic material in it, it burns a lot hotter. That fake Christmas tree burns a lot hotter because of the chemicals it is made out of.
Mm-hmm.
So the seat across from it that's not even touching the flame can get extremely hot and catch on fire. So if you as a firefighter is in there trying to fight this couch and Christmas tree fire, and the temperature is over the combustion temperature for that chair behind you, it can catch fire on you. And now you're trapped with a fire behind you. It's a very dangerous. I personally rather go through a backdraft than a flashover.
Okay, what's a backdraft?
So a backdraft is essentially when you got, and again, I'll go back to a room because it's a lot easier to explain into a room.
Yeah.
You got a fire burning inside of a room, and you close off the oxygen to that room, but it's getting just enough oxygen to smolder. Okay. And essentially, it just sits there and you're depriving it of oxygen. Well, if you say break a window, open up the door quickly, somehow introduce a lot of oxygen or a lot of air into this fire room at a very high rate, it immediately blows up and it shoots and actually explodes. And that a lot of firefighters will know what I'm talking about when I talk about the fire triangle. And this is how you learn how fire burns and all that. It's a fire triangle. So for you to have fire, you have to have three things. You got to have an ignition source, you got to have fuel, and you got to have oxygen. You got to have those three things. If any one of those three things are gone, you will not have fire. So in a backdraft, you're essentially taking away the oxygen, but you still got the fuel and the ignition source. You introduce that oxygen at a higher rate of speed, but with a backdraft, it's over and done with like that. Like it'll blow out and everything's on fire. To me, a flashover, if it flashes over a good distance back to where your extraction area is or your way of getting out, then you're trapped. If you're not sitting inside the room of a backdraft, you essentially can watch the smoke and see how the smoke is breathing and moving to know it's about to happen. Unless you got the gear that we have with the temperatures, it can tell us our temperature gauge in a room with a flashover, you don't know what the temperature is.
Right.
So it's to me is a little bit more dangerous. I mean, I know there's probably people out there say backdraft might be dangerous, but to me, I think flashover are more dangerous than anything. But at that one, I've finally really experienced a major fire. It really, I got to see how things burn and literally watched it breathe. Sorry about the dogs.
That's all right.
She's a old search and rescue dog. So, but I got to watch it actually breathe. And to me, it was good because it was an abandoned building. There was no people's property, nobody's stuff burning up, nobody entrapped into it. It literally was just this abandoned building. So you could do your job, but admire what fire essentially was.
Okay.
So, and that was like my first big fire. that was like the solidity of, yeah, I wanted to be the nozzle man. I didn't want to be, the pump op, the guy running the water. I wanted to be the first guy in head on with what I call the dragon and fighting this thing. Like it was like that was who I wanted to do.
Right.
I loved being like that. So later on, I ended up getting my RIT certification, which is Rapid Intervention Team. What we do as RIT is if there's a structure fire going on, let's say there's a major structure fire going on, or there's entrapment in a house fire, firefighter down in a house fire, anything that could potentially cause somebody to get entrapped inside of this house that's on fire or building or whatever. We come and be prepared. And in case somebody is entrapped, we go in and try to rescue that person. Most departments, like your pay departments, usually have a RIT team. They have a nozzle team that kind of works together. As a volunteer, we didn't. We sometimes would go in and not have a hose. And me and my partner at the time, it didn't bother us. We were trained. We knew what to do. We go through what we call the hot box all the time, and it's like a simulation of actually a collapse area where you have to kind of go through, break through walls, and we done it a gazillion times in the hot box. It was nothing to us. We can get in, do what we need to do. I didn't care if I had to pull you out the roof, the window, the floor, the ground. I didn't care. We were getting you and getting you out. And you just had to deal with it. It wasn't like, okay, I got you. Now let me assess you, make sure you're okay. No, it's like, okay, I got you. We're getting the hell out. Like it was that dire. If your RIT team's going in on a search and rescue, it's bad. And it was another thing that I learned and enjoyed doing. It gave me, and I joke a lot about this. It gave me more of a rush than any drug that I have ever touched in my life. And that says a lot because, like I said, had a lot of personal life go on. So it was a rush knowing what I was doing was helping somebody. It was like the adrenaline from it just was overwhelming. And you just wanted more and more and more. Unfortunately, and again, like so I said, I'm not really going to go too much into the department I was on at the time. Some people kind of took it too far, wanting more and caused more, which ultimately got the fire department shut down. Unfortunately, some of us, like myself, and there was a couple other of us that were actually good firefighters, got looked upon as bad firefighters because we were part of that department. And we found out who it was because he tried to go set the mill on fire again and unfortunately got electrocuted by touching a live wire. Yeah. So when that got shut down, it literally was a blow. I took a hard blow with that because it wasn't who I was. I wasn't this person that just sat around and didn't do nothing when somebody was in peril. And now I'm out on the department. I'm having to deal with legal stuff, being scrutinized for being on that department, and had nothing to do with it.
Right.
So, it's tarnishing my name, and I had nothing to do with it. So, unfortunately, took a dark road. Went down the wrong path on some situation for a couple of years.
Okay.
because at the time I just had it in my mind, if I can't do what I felt I was put on this earth to do, then why even care? So I kind of gave up. I mean, there was still part of me at the time missing, and I knew what was missing, but I kind of gave up. All the work, all that I put in, I gave up on it. So between about 2002 to 2005, I wasn't on a department. Now I still try to do stuff. Like I went and was a bartender for a little bit. I still look for essentially trouble just to get that rush. But it was the wrong way. It really was.
So what were some of the other ways that you coped down your dark path? I mean, what
At
were
the
some?
time,
Yeah.
so one was alcohol, and I know talking about a catch-22, but I'm 42, to be 43 years old now. That's not part of my life no more. But
Right.
I started doing drugs, partying all the time, just didn't care what happened. There was times that I literally black out, wake up 3 days later somewhere I didn't know where I was at. And because again, I felt like I was useless. My entire life was based around being the one for everybody else to lean on.
Right, because your purpose was taken away from you.
Yes. In my mind, my purpose was taken away. So I didn't have a purpose at the time. Unfortunately, and it does get a little deep, is in 2004. And now keep in mind, and I'm not really going to go in a lot of details because it's still a hard thing for me to deal with. I know you would understand dealing with having a loss of family member too, but in 2001, I had my first son die, and I actually held him when he passed away. And being certified, and in my mind, I'm supposed to help and bring people back. There was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
So with all the combination of everything going on, it just put me down this real slippery slope. And unfortunately, in 2004, I tried to end my life. I don't know what stopped it. I really don't. I don't know. Nobody saved me. Nobody helped me. I woke up the next day. I was sick as a dog, but I woke up the next day. I took a bunch of pills thinking, you know what? I'm just going to go to sleep and never wake up. And I woke up. And like my therapist, she, I tell her, I said, if I joke about something that's like a dark humor, I do apologize. That's my way of coping with things. Mm-hmm. So the things I've done in my past, I use humor in it to cope with it. So when I woke up with this major headache, and I'm like, I am really retarded and I can't even kill myself. Like, what in the world? Like, I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't figure out what was that brought me and kept me alive. Like, why? I had nothing to live for. My career was gone. My purpose in life was gone. There was nothing. I had nothing to live for. But, by the grace of God, I was still alive.
Right.
2005, this is a year later. I'm still kind of in my slippery slope, but this time I'm not really doing drugs at the time. It was more into just drinking. I just stayed drunk all the time.
Yeah.
I was a bouncer at a nightclub. So my pay was alcohol. Went to a bar that was a local bar down here where I grew up at, and a lot of the older guys from the fire department was in there. A lot of the guys from the department that got shut down was in there. The good ones, you know, this was like the bar that everybody hung out that was part of the community. And usually if a call went out, half the bar would clear out. It was like the fire department hangout. And I decided I was going to go in there. I haven't been in there since I was on the department. So I kind of, stayed away from the place. So I decided to go in one night, have me a drink, say hey to some old friends, and, see what was going on. And very fortunate for me, I met my now wife there.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and again, I really wasn't looking for nobody because again, I was just in that mindset that I just did not care. But saw her, immediately fell in love. I know that's so cliche, but was too shy to say something. So her friend actually walked up to the bar. So I kind of asked her friend if her friend she was single. She's like, yeah. She just graduated high school and everything. I'm like, oh, cool, and I tell her I kind of think she's cute. And this is a karaoke bar, so I'm drunk. I start singing to her at a karaoke bar in front of everybody, like, and we got to talking. And honestly, if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have made it past 2005, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a lot different than I am. Let's say that. Opposites do attract. She is the one that actually does complete me. She keeps me in line a lot. Like I text you the other day. It was like, so, how rated is your podcast? And because my wife's like, your language, make sure you watch what you say. Yeah. And so she keeps me in line.
Yeah. I understand that completely.
So, we got together and ended up having our first son, my 18-year-old. And again, I know timeline's probably going to be weird, but I'm really trying to touch on the personal life of my whole personal travels. But by this time, I done had a second son, with my first ex-wife. And, unfortunately wasn't unable to see him due to custody battle situations. Just that was some of the stuff I was just dealing with at the time of my life, and it was just a lot. 2006, we had our first son. Unfortunately, relationships do have rocky roads.
They do.
So I ended up moving to upstate South Carolina at this time. By this time, I done with hanging out with the people that was feeding me the drugs. My wife got me stopped drinking. She got me sobered up, everything like this. So I was sober, but again, rocky road in a relationship. So I moved to 2006. I moved up to upstate. Got on an apartment up there, and it was another volunteer department. It was a small department, and I kind of always loved the small departments. To me, it was more tight knit. Because, like I said, growing up, I was taught the brotherhood. Your fellow firefighter is your brother. You look out for each other. It don't matter what the difference is. You look out for each other. That's what you do. you can have your issues later on,
Right.
But in the time of need, you work it together. So I got on this department. I found out that that's how they was. So now I'm, okay, I'm back on the department. I feel whole again. Funny story behind all this. At the time, I did not have a license because I had them taken away from North Carolina because I forgot to pay a ticket.
Oh man.
Yeah. I went the wrong way on a one-way street in downtown Asheville. I've never been in Asheville in my life. So, and I just forgot to pay the ticket. So I didn't have a vehicle. So I would respond to the fire department from my house on a bicycle. Yes.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, I would actually beat some of the firefighters to the station on a bicycle. So my neighbors would always get a kick out of seeing it, and they knew there was a fire call somewhere because they see me run out the door with my bike and haul down the road, pedaling like no other. But again, I wasn't letting nothing hold me back. Again, at the time, I was trained in this. This is what I was put here to do. My mentality is where I feel comfortable. End up getting I lived up there from 2006 to around 2009. The department I was on, and I know a lot of firefighters will understand this, is the initiation part. That's one thing I can tell you now, being retired, that I do miss was the initiations. This department made me actually put out a 50-acre cow field full of cow patties by myself.
Jeez.
It was a controlled burn. They did not tell me it was a controlled burn. So here I am walking around this big old cow field with a bunch of burning cow patties. It stinks to high heaven, wondering where everybody else is at. My chief is driving the truck, and he's like, all right, just walk it. Once I get the head of the fire stop, I look at it, and they're all just standing up there clapping. Yeah. I'm like, really? And then the chief gets out. He's like, yeah, we just initiating in. This was actually a controlled burn. I was like, really?
That's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Literally was a bunch of bullshit on fire, burning. And that was like,
yeah, no pun intended.
that really solidified, that drive to be a part of the department. It really did, because if you could take a joke like that and have something like that happen to you, you could laugh about it, and it made it a lot closer. It made you closer to who you was next to.
Right.
And, by this time I've learned, a bunch of different, they're like sayings for firefighters and all, and they do teach them. But like, there's one that you learn is the 2 in, 2 out rule, which means 2 people in, 2 people out. Mm-hmm. You're always with somebody. If your air goes low, they coming out with you. You never leave your partner behind. Things like that. I've done, literally got solidified into me and learned. So I've always strived my life on these things. Ended up with this department, I ended up getting my high-rise rescue, rope rescue, my swift water rescue, my confined space entry, and I don't even know why I got it, because I never ever had worked at an airport before. But at the time, they were talking about building this little airstrip, so we ended up having to get the FAA regulation firefighting
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even tell you what it is because it was just like a redundant certification that we had to have because they were thinking about building an airport. So, I continued trying to get as much certifications as I could because I still had that passion of learning, about it, learning what to do in these situations, how this happens, why it happens. I done learned how to read smoke, which is an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of your veteran firefighters that's been around it long enough can tell you they can look at a smoke and tell you what a fire's doing. And it's interesting, watching everything. So by this time, I'm pretty much certified in a lot of stuff. I'm back happy again. Again, unfortunately, had some personal stuff going on in my life. Later on, after 12, found out that I possibly had a daughter. Was going through, stuff with my wife now, but I was home. I was at an apartment. I was somewhere that I felt welcomed.
Right.
I was whole again. Well, early 2009. By this time, I've done. I could tell you countless of fires, countless of car wrecks and CPRs. I've done delivered 2 babies by this time. Like I've seen stuff by this point that just ugh. Like I've seen disgusting things, and that's why I asked you about the PG thing, because it was like there's some things that I've done seen by this point that it's just like ugh.
Right.
But it was part of the job.
Okay.
It was part of the job. You knew what you was getting yourself into when you signed up.
Mm-hmm.
So by this point, I then had another pretty bad car wreck where a lady flipped the car, went through a barbed wire fence, sliced herself open. Helped get to medevac. Had to help her get to medevac, and I was holding her intestines the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And again, those times you're not thinking about I'm holding somebody's intestines. You're only thinking about is what my training is telling me to do is keep cold compress on it, keep it stable, keep her stable, keep her talking. Let's get into ambulance. Let's get going. You're not thinking about what you're actually doing. It's almost like you're going autopilot.
Okay.
And at the time, you're not taught to be remorseful.
Right.
You're not taught to have the feeling of sadness in those situations. Afterwards, you can, and we would always have what they call a degrass, which is where the fire department would sit around, especially if we had a really bad call that either had a death or something like that. We would have a degrass, and we just sit around and talk about how we felt about the call.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, us being tough guys, oh, we're fine. We know it's going to happen.
Right.
That's just part. And deep down, we're traumatized.
Right.
I like one. Sorry. This is one of the calls that got me. Like I've had a couple of them, but as a RIT team, we got called out late night to a structure fire. Possible entrapment. It was a family of 5. It was 3 kids and a mom and father. Old Victorian house. And again, I hate the old Victorian houses. They're tinder boxes.
Right.
Just like trailer fires. They're tinder boxes. Like, I learned that a trailer can go up in 8 minutes from the point of ignition to 8 minutes. As a volunteer firefighter, it might take you 10 minutes at 3 o'clock in the morning to get up, get dressed, get to the department, get there. So by the time you're there,
It's gone.
if somebody's inside, they're not making it.
Yeah, it's gone already.
It's gone. And now you got to fight extremely hard. And so I hated these old houses. I hated trailer fires. I hated that. Like me, I would rather deal with a brick home any day because it confined the place. It confined everything into an area a lot easier. So it was easier for us to fight it and potentially save lives. So we get this call. It goes out of the structure fire, possible entrapment. That's what dispatch told us. That's what dispatch would relate to them. It was called in by a passerby that saw the house on fire, saw the cars in the yard, assumed, somebody was in the house. So we was responding, I want to say probably about 3 miles. It wasn't a very far response. So again, and I hate to use this because I know that I'm going to get backlash from a lot of firefighters, but by this time you get into this routine. Like everything becomes routine. Like, you're going to go and pull an 1 3/4 to run through the front door, or if it's a fully involved fire, you're probably going to drop a 5-inch at the hydrant and run a forward lay, which is where they pull the hose off and the truck drives forward. Then you got a reverse lay, which is just they drop the hose and reverse back to the hydrant. So that's the difference in a reverse and a forward lay. Okay. But it's routine. To us, it's routine. We know, we've been trained. They teach you, if you don't use it, you lose it. So you're training all the time. Every Tuesday, you're training. So by this time, you're drilled into your brain of what the steps are to do. So you're not thinking of the worst case scenarios at these times, especially when you're limited to what you get, as in, the information from dispatch. And I'm not knocking any dispatch, but I couldn't do dispatch. I could be honest with you. I could never do dispatch.
Right. They have an extremely hard job.
Oh my God, yes, they do. I've talked to many of them, and I could never do dispatch. That's one job I could not sit there and have that conversation with somebody going through something and having to say, no. But so I don't not dispatch it. Unfortunately, they're limited to what information they get.
Right.
So we're responding, we're gearing up, we're thinking, okay, we're going to be doing our, 1 3/4 off the side. The hydrant's at this intersection. We know the type of house because we always check properties and map them out and everything like that. So we know exactly what house we're going in, what the layout of these houses are. We got all this in our brain. We know this.
Right.
We were probably about 1 mile out, and my chief, which was driving at the time, I heard him whisper over to the captain's seat and tell him, look to the right. By this time, I've already packed out. I'm sitting in the back. I've got my pack on. I'm getting my mask ready. I've done turn my SCBA on, which is my self-contained breathing apparatus. That's why if you hear me say my pack, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And I hear him say, look to the right. So I look out to, which would be my left, because I'm back facing the front of the truck. And you see this huge gloom. Now we know we have a fully involved structure fire and still possible entrapments. So this changes the entire dynamic of what we're doing. Because now we've got to get there and hope to God nobody's entrapped. Because if they're entrapped now, as a RIP team, we're going in trying to rescue who we can. So we get there, realize the entire house is fully involved, and the chief is out first. The firefighter that was sitting in the captain's seat, he's already out. He's pulling line. I haven't jumped out yet, and I could see my chief run and stop. And the look on his face just told me something wasn't right. So I'm getting out. I've already got my face mask on. All I got to do is lock in, grab the hose, and go. So as I jump out, he puts his hands out and just stops me. And I've never been stopped. And I'm looking at him, and he does this number. And he's telling me to take off my mask. Yeah. By this time, I got my flash hood on, my mask on, tank on the back, helmet on. I got the pump running. I can't hear nothing. I got the flames going. I can't hear nothing. I take it off. Unfortunately, got trapped. Unfortunately, that's how it went. Later on, we found out the fire actually started in the kitchen. There was an electrical fire in the kitchen that started it. Didn't really have any smoke detectors, which is something I always push for people to have. Is please, for the love of God, at least have one. If you don't want a bunch of them because you get tired of changing out the batteries, at least have one in your central house. Something.
Yeah.
It will save your life.
Change out your batteries regularly.
Yes. If you have them, change them out. My drawer is full of 9-volt batteries right now. Mm-hmm. I have a fire extinguisher that sits beside my stove. Like I'm very adamant about this stuff because it will save your life. It will get you out. Stuff can be replaced, but people can't. Mm-hmm. And this is something I learned over the years of dealing with this. But at the time he stopped me, you could hear him screaming for help, crying, just the agony of it. And he jumped on his radio. He told them that we confirmed having entrapment, unable to make entry. If we're unable to make entry, that means the place is about to come down. It's fully involved. There is no possible way of fighting this thing. Essentially, we're going into defensive mode where we do what we call a surround and drown. And that's where you just get everything around it and you drown it. That's literally all you can do. And being somebody as myself, feeling like, my purpose to help, always help. I never really put my own help before anybody else. I didn't. And I know it's bad. I never put myself as, I could potentially get harmed. I knew the risk. I knew what it was, but my job was to help, and I couldn't. We were stuck. There was nothing we could do. And eventually, the screams stopped. We done our job. We put the fire out, got the bodies out. Unfortunately, it was 3 youngins. The oldest was 14, the youngest was 6, and the mom and dad. They were all in the same room, so we do believe that they kind of knew they weren't going to make it, so they went out together. And we try to use that, and I personally try to use that thought that they went together to kind of cope with the situation, because to me, I think that's the most awful way to go. Right. And this is coming from somebody that it wouldn't bother me if I went that way. But it is one of the awful way to go.
Now, do you think they probably died of smoke inhalation first before they burned? You think?
So that was the issue that we were trying to figure out. And to me, I'm still puzzling this one because I believe they died of smoke inhalation. I want to believe they died of smoke inhalation. That's the thing. In my mind, that's how they passed away, with smoke inhalation. Unfortunately, from where the sound was coming from, that room was fully involved.
Mm.
And they were all laying on the floor, which they do teach you in a house fire: get low, stay low, below the smoke. So we don't know if they got down too low, the room flashed over, and that's when we pulled in, hearing them in the flashover. But mentally, for me to able to handle it, I would say they went out smoke inhalation. I mean, when the autopsy come out, they did have smoke inhalation. But of course, they're going to have smoke inhalation from the fire.
Yeah.
They're going to have severe burns to their lungs and internals from breathing in the hot gases and stuff like that. They're going to have charcoal, all of that. So the autopsy, they put it out as smoke inhalation. But being on scene, it was hard to kind of say which one done it, which did. Just because where the sound of them screaming coming out was fully involved. So, yeah, it was one of the hardest ones that I had to deal with, of actually being on the department and being helpless. And the feeling of being helpless when you have all the training, all the certifications. You've done this hundreds of times. Like it's a 9-to-5 job to you. And there's nothing you could do. It's crushing. And unfortunately, it hit me hard, because especially when it comes to children, children calls are like my kryptonite. I've been on a lot of them. I have unfortunately had to tell a mother that her 8-month-old has passed away on Christmas Eve due to a car wreck. And like I said, I will get into one of the stories from one of the kids' situations. But to me, children are like a hard one. I don't really get emotional that much with like geriatric patients or the older generations, just because they've lived their life, they've experienced life, they've had their time, they've seen their kids, their grandkids, their great grandkids, they've seen everything they've experienced. So yeah, it still sucks, but it goes back to everybody dies. So with the geriatrics, it was more of, we trying our best, but at least they lived a good life.
That was normal.
It was normal.
Right.
The abnormal ones were the ones that was hard, especially when it comes to younger kids, younger children. So after that call, I think I took about a week of not doing any response, just to kind of take a break, because it was kind of hard to be held back from something that I was trained to do.
Okay.
And I can't say I understand what military guys go through or what police officers go through, but just being held back from your job is so hard when you're trained to run in. You're trained to run when everybody else is running away.
So it'd be fair to say that this impacted you mentally because of the
It really did. It really did. It impacted me extremely hard because, one, I was a father at the time. I couldn't imagine that. it impacted me because I felt like I didn't do my job. I ended up developing what they call survivor guilt because I was trained to save lives, and I didn't save a life. And I'm standing here now, and these people just literally lost not only their entire family, but family members have just lost an entire half of their family. And you got neighbors and people standing around looking at you going like, why aren't y'all doing something? And trying to explain, like, we could try everything we can, but literally the only thing we could do is throw water on them. And the problem with doing that is you're going to steam burn somebody. You throw a bunch of water on a really hot fire, it turns to steam.
Yeah.
So do you want us to essentially boil them to death? Or throw firefighters running into a house that essentially is going to collapse? There is nothing but a wall of fire. So you get this survivor guilt.
Right.
You feel guilty because it's what you're trained to do and you didn't fulfill your job. And yeah, it was volunteer, but it was still a job. And it never was about the money. It was about, again, the job. It was about doing what was right. And you couldn't. So until that we kind of, I had my chief come by. He checked on me. We had the chaplain come by, just make sure I was okay. It took a couple of days to kind of get past the fact that, essentially there was nothing we could do. I really had to work with that part of understanding there was nothing we could do.
Yeah.
So come back to the station, trying to get back on track on everything. At the time it was early 2009. Kind of a cold time, especially here in South Carolina. Oh my Lord, our weather is bipolar like no other. So when we get cold, we get cold. So we got called out to an abandoned house. Again, we love abandoned houses. We really do, because nobody lives there, no property damage. It's an old building. We can actually use it as a training situation.
Right.
If it's going to be demolished anyways, let the fire department train with it.
Right. Exactly.
So again, back to mentality of routine. We get there. And if you need me to, I can explain it, but this will help like other firefighters understand kind of how the layout of the house was. So when we pulled up, we were second due in. We were search and rescue.
Okay.
Again, it was cold. It was an abandoned house. We knew there was a fire. We did have an issue where we were having homeless people go in abandoned houses, setting fires to stay warm, ultimately catching the place on fire. But they usually run and leave and never stay. So that's kind of what our mentality was. It was probably some homeless that accidentally set the house on fire. So we were second due in. We were search and rescue. We were actually mutual aid for the city because that's just how they do it with structural fires. Usually you have your mutual aids come. And went in, and the house, the front door was on the A side of the house, which essentially is your entrance of the house. And then you had your B side, which is on the left, your C, which is back, and your D, which is on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
And, your A, B, C, and D corners of the house or building, whatever it is. So we enter through the front door. We go to a right-handed sweep. And essentially what that is we go to the right. We got one hand on the wall. I got myself, my partner, and we're sweeping while we keep contact to the right side of the wall. If we get to a door, we go into the room, and we essentially follow the wall as we're searching the rooms on the right.
Mm-hmm.
They do left-handed sweeps. They do right-handed sweeps. There's different sweeps you learn. But the fire room itself was on the BD or BC corner of the house. So essentially, we were taught to do our search where the fire is not at first, where there's more smoke than fire. Because essentially, that's where you'll find more of your victims at.
Right.
Because the smoke inhalation gets to them, everything like that. So we get in there, we're doing our search. Again, mentality, routine search, nothing going on. The fire itself was burning pretty good. I mean, it literally had one room was burning on the A, B, and then you had the BC corner completely involved, and it was kind of spread into the BA corner of the house. Okay. So we go in there, we get to the fire area, we're checking, nobody. We start moving to the front of the A side of the house, coming around the B corner, and we get to this room, which is fully involved. We know there's nobody in there. If they are, they're not surviving.
All right.
But again, it's an abandoned house, so we're not thinking no more. My partner opens up the door, and we look in and realize, and this is where the joke comes from, me looking like a meth head.
Yeah.
It was a meth lab. Undoubtedly, something caught fire. They had some propane tanks in there. Again, the windows were all boarded up, so we couldn't see what was in there.
Mm-hmm.
When we realized what was in there, I looked at my partner, he looked at me, and we were trying to book it out of there. Like, we knew we had to go, but it was too late. And it exploded. It was the 40-pound propane tanks. There was two of them, and they blew up. It blew the room completely apart, the roof completely, big old hole through the roof. It threw me through the back wall into the living room, which is also the main entrance where we come into the front door. It blew my partner back towards the C side of the house, which is like a glass pool deck area and the kitchen. I can tell you this right now, movies do not dictate what explosions are, especially when it comes to flammable liquid gas. And by this time, I'm already certified in flag. I've got that certification, but it's a whoosh. There's no boom. You know, it's a whoosh, and there's a lot of percussion behind it and a lot of pressure. End up getting trapped. My passive device immediately goes off, which is a personal alert safety system. Most of your firefighters, when they wear them, usually they hook to the pack, and when you stand up, it automatically unhooks and turns on. So it's an automatic thing. It starts going off to alert where your down firefighters are. That's the sound you never want to hear. As a firefighter, you never want to hear that sound. I really don't remember a lot after the explosion, and it was due to the fact I had a concussion. I blew out my left eardrum completely, partially damaged the right, fractured the L4 through the L6 in my lower back. Oh my God. Fractured my left hip, multiple cuts, lacerations. I was done. I literally just, I don't remember being pulled out. I remember being outside. I remember the explosion. I don't remember coming out. So they, of course, they rush us to the hospital. We get there. They x-raying, going through all that, dealing with the pain of it. And at that time, it was like, well, shit, my career's over with. Over what? Drugs? My career is over with because of somebody being stupid.
Right.
Like, I was done. Again, here we go. Round 2. Done.
That's how you blew out all your teeth.
Yeah. So essentially it blew out most of my top and partial of the bottom and broke a lot of them.
Oh,
And over the years, I've slowly have been getting them removed. So right now, I literally have none right now. Like I said, I had 7 cut out Monday. My last 7 on the bottom cut out. So, but by mid-April, I have me a brand new set of teeth and beautiful smile and won't look like a meth head again. So I always joke about that and say a meth house and meth lab made me look like a meth addict. So,
right.
But after that happened, of course, you have to go through rehab, which was hard. Trying to get back on feet, but I was determined. I was determined that I was not going to let this stop me. I was going to get back up. I was going to keep moving, keep going. Unfortunately, I wasn't on a department because, unfortunately, with the injury, I couldn't be on the department. Which was devastating, being told that, unfortunately, we can't have you on the roster anymore. That was a major blow. Because I just literally, in my mind, was like, I literally just risked my life and almost died. My partner literally almost died. And you can't keep us on it just to do pump op or just be an engineer. Yeah, we don't have to. Yeah, something. I do auxiliary. I'll sit there and bring you water if I needed to. Because it was just where I felt like I belonged was in a department. In the department, I just felt like I belonged in a department.
Right.
I was home. I was around people that I knew had my back. And when that happened, it was a devastating blow. It was another one. So in late 2009, I decided I was going to move to North Carolina. If I wasn't going to be on a department, I'm just going to move up there close to what I call my brother from another mother. Be up there with him. Went up there, lived up there for about 8 months. Me and the wife reconciled. So I moved back home. And got on an apartment down here that's literally right up the road. In fact, they pass our house all the time. And the funny thing about that department was when I was 14 years old, I shattered my femur on a trampoline. Didn't fall off, nothing. Literally, my cousin bounced me high. I come down wrong, shattered my femur. The same department that I was on was the same department that come and had to put me in traction on my leg and pull me off the trampoline. So the same guys that was still there, now I am coming on the same department that really helped me when I was 14 years old. Right. So it was kind of like a surreal, like, reunion. Like, hey, y'all remember when y'all had to use this? Oh yeah, I remember that was me. I'm still walking. So got on this department, and I gotta say, they're a very great department. I'm not going to downplay any department. Everybody has their problems.
Right.
It's just part of an organization. That's just like, I mean, again, I'll never downplay certain officers. We won't go in that story, but that's just, there's some things in departments that need to be changed.
Yeah.
Any department, firefighting, police, military, first responder, even CEOs at companies, there's always problems. So I got on this department, was on there until, and again, I have to look at my notes because, like I said, I got all the dates and everything of all happened. But got on there till 2000, about 2010.
Okay.
And then again, of course, relationship problems. Gotta love them.
Seems to be common with that line of work.
It honestly, I do believe it does. Now, my wife, she knew what I'd done. She understood why I'd done it. And in fact, she's the one that's pushed me to do what I do today. But I there has been many a time she has listened to the radio and heard how bad the call was and didn't know if I was coming home.
Yeah.
They've actually been on one call where we was running. We had advanced education that morning. We had a 100-acre forest fire that afternoon, and that night we had a 2-story house fully involved.
Oh my gosh.
It was a busy day. Never had time to eat nothing. Never had time to take a break. So at that structure fire, sugar level dropped on me. Ended up in the ambulance, and unfortunately had to leave the site because I had to go eat. She saw them bring me down because we were actually on our way to get something to eat when the call went out. Mm-hmm. So my kids and my wife was with me, and they see me get led down the hill from this fire into the ambulance. So I do believe it was hard for her. I do. I know there was times she kind of hated me leaving because I would leave sometimes in the middle of family dinners, holidays, stuff like that. When that pager went off, I was going.
Right.
That was just what I was doing. So, we have unfortunately had our situations, and I decided I moved to Missouri. I was going to go back to college. I was going to get me a degree in science technology and in fire science. Again, I still was, fascinated about it, about the dynamics of it. Get to Missouri, and I start college at Missouri S&T. Mm-hmm. Funny thing is, I didn't even get a fire degree. I actually got a psychology degree.
Oh wow!
I didn't even get the fire degree. I actually got more interested into the criminal psychology of arsonists.
Okay.
So I went into criminal psychology to learn about arson. It was funny. I completely went the opposite the way I wanted to go, but it worked. So during this time, I wasn't on a fire department. I lived next door to the fire department, so I would just go out and take photos as they leave and turn around and go print them out, give them to the fire departments so they can hang them up. I wasn't really looking to be on the department while I was up there because, again, I was still healing. I was still trying to get past the fact that, I was kicked off. I was injured. I was going through surgeries. I was still in remission. So I had it, in my mind, okay, I'll eventually be back on a department, but right now I need to get my health better. So come 2011, by this time I'm not even thinking about firefighting, to be honest with you. I'm not thinking about first responder. I'm just enjoying my life, living up in Rolla, Missouri, working at a KFC, going to college, just living the single life. Well, my birthday was actually on May 20th. Well, I had to work on my birthday. So on May 24th, I believe, it might be 22nd or 24th. I can't remember the dates. That's the beauty of a concussion. And that's the switch of thinking. It makes you go dumb sometimes. But me and a couple of people from work decided, since I couldn't do nothing on my birthday, we were going to do something on that day. They asked me what I want to do. I want to go fishing. I'm a country boy. I grew up around out in the woods fishing and barefoot and all that. So I want to go fishing.
Right.
So we decided we're going to go to Joplin, Missouri for my birthday to go fish down there at one of their ponds. Bad mistake. We get down there. Beautiful morning. We were catching some good fish, just kind of enjoying the day. Game warden came and told us that, there were some storms rolling in, that they were kicking everybody out the lake for the safety, which, again, we understand. That's just how it goes. Decided to get into town, fill up, get some snacks, hit the road, because we had about a 2-hour drive back from Joplin back to Rolla. We get into the gas station and power goes out. Now, by this time, I've learned Missouri is used to storms. They're used to power going out. They're used to this type of weather. Us down here where I live at, we don't get that kind of weather. Like, my first big snowfall was in Missouri, and I was, a grown man. Like, literally, we don't get that kind of weather here. Like what we had lately, we had 2 snowstorms this year, which is unprecedented for us. Right. So everybody's like, oh, it's just another storm. Then tornado sirens goes off. Okay. And everybody again, a little worried, but not much. Until we realized how big this freaking tornado was. I have never in my life been in a tornado like this. Never. I've been in some whirlwinds. We get spin ups here now and then, but nothing compared to that. Get hit straight up into the gas station. There's about 23 of us crammed into the beer cooler. And got hit. The roof actually dropped about 3 feet. The whole place imploded on us. Again, luckily, nobody inside the gas station passed away. We did have some cut and bruises, but luckily nobody inside there passed away.
Injuries, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's like I joke with my wife because the same gas station they built literally like right up the road just recently, and I told her it's an omen that if we ever have a tornado like that from here, we're hollering our butt to that gas station because they make damn good coolers.
Yeah, those things are pretty solid.
Exactly. So I know where my storm shelter is now. But again, we get out, and I don't know. I couldn't tell you what it is. I've had a lot of older firefighters tell me it's just something that's in people that are first responders. I immediately snap into my training.
Right.
Like, I was bleeding. I literally ended up with a cut across my eye. I ended up dislocating my shoulder. but I didn't care. I didn't feel no pain. I immediately was into rescue mode, search and rescue, first aid. It was immediate.
Right.
I saw
Triage.
I saw the devastation. I was not upset. I was not crying. I was not worried. I was not scared. And I knew what needed to be done. And actually, I just last year told my mama the truth about this one. My mom called me about 2 hours after it hit. By this time, I've already been checked out. I'm going to IC, which is Instant Commander, finding out where they're needing help at, letting them know, what my certifications are, so he can use me where he needs me. My mom calls. Where do you live in Missouri? I was like, oh, I live in Rolla. Oh, so you don't live in Joplin? I was like, no. She goes, okay. She never asked if I was in Joplin.
All right.
So technically I didn't lie to her.
Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.